This is a time of great opportunity for BHP. The resources we produce are essential to the energy transition and global economic growth. Our products are fundamental to the way we live now and into the future. Now more than ever, we need to provide the world the resources it needs responsibly and sustainably. Imagine what we can achieve if we continue to think big.
Good morning. It is indeed a privilege to be giving a keynote address at this 2020 IMARC conference. And I commend the conference organisers for rearranging the conference format to accommodate the unusual circumstances of this COVID-restricted year. For my topic, I felt it appropriate to commence by noting typical examples of contemporary mining company purpose statements, which provide an insight into how corporate boards interpret and articulate core objects of their companies. I'll quote the corporate purpose from 6 well-known companies: to transform natural resources into prosperity and sustainable development, to create value and improve lives, to bring people and resources together to build a better world, reimagining mining to improve people's lives, to produce the materials essential to human progress, to responsibly source the commodities that advance everyday life. There is a common thread evident in these statements, conveying lofty ideals with an emphasis on sustainable development towards a betterment of society. So as you would imagine, sustainability features quite prominently in boardroom agendas, given the articulation of corporate purpose. But there are plenty of other external influences that focus the collective board minds on sustainability matters. I'll share some of these by way of context and background. The International Finance Corporation Sustainability Framework outlines a commitment to sustainable development and is an integral part of IFC's approach to risk management. In the case of its direct investments, the IFC requires its clients to apply the sustainability performance standards to manage environmental and social risks and impacts, so the development opportunities are enhanced. The 8 performance standards establish criteria that the client is to achieve throughout the life of an investment, relating to the assessment and management of environmental and social risks and impacts, health, labour and working conditions, resource efficiency and pollution prevention, community health, safety and security, land acquisition and involuntary resettlement, biodiversity conservation and sustainable management of living natural resources, Indigenous peoples and cultural heritage. The UN Global Compact was established in the year 2000, and it held that corporate sustainability starts with a company's value system and a principles-based approach to doing business. It outlines fundamental responsibilities in the areas of human rights, labour, environment and anti-corruption. Member companies are obliged to incorporate the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact into strategies, policies and procedures, and to establish a culture of integrity. The 10 principles are derived from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Labour Organisation's Declaration on Fundamental Principles and Rights at Work, the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, and the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. In relation to human rights, businesses are required to support and respect the protection of internationally proclaimed human rights and ensure that they are not complicit in human rights abuses. In relation to labour, companies are required to commit to uphold the freedom of association and the effective recognition of the right to collective bargaining, eliminate all forms of forced and compulsory labour, the effective abolition of child labour, and the elimination of discrimination in respect of employment and occupation. In relation to environmental management, companies should support a precautionary approach to environmental challenges, undertake initiatives to promote greater environmental responsibility, and encourage the development and implementation of environmentally supportive technologies. And companies are required to commit to work against corruption in all its forms, including extortion and bribery. In 2015, the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals were adopted by all 193 UN member states as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which set out a 15-year plan to achieve the goals. These were also incorporated into the overall Global Compact agenda. At a global SDG summit in 2019, there was a call by the UN for a decade of action and delivery for sustainable development and commitments to mobilise financing, enhance national implementation and strengthen institutions to achieve the goals by the target date of 2030. A growing number of mining companies now make reference to their alignment with a number of the UN SDGs, and this will undoubtedly face increasing scrutiny in the coming years. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has seriously impacted advances across several of these global goals, notably in SDG 1, to end poverty in all of its forms, and SDG 2, to end hunger and achieve food security. However, the pressures continue to increase on governments and companies to deliver against these and other key goals, such as SDG 13, taking urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. The ESG investment community and major institutional shareholders are increasingly active in holding corporate boards to account across a range of sustainability and related issues, probing companies' understanding of and compliance with global standards and expectations from the UN Global Compact, the SDGs, and the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, to TCFD frameworks and action against their recommendations, to climate change action, specifically global emissions reduction targets towards zero emissions, and to just transitions or climate action with social inclusion. But it's not just engagement with this category of stakeholders that matter in boardrooms of companies. I think there has been a growing awareness in recent years of the importance of not only recognising the range of stakeholder groups for mining companies, but the need to meaningfully engage with them. Typically, these stakeholders are characterised as employees, shareholders, governments, local, Indigenous and regional communities and landowners, suppliers, contractors and business partners. A board's access to and understanding the expectations of each of these stakeholder groups is crucially important to ensuring that the company is fulfilling its purpose and demonstrating appropriate levels of governance. Given the breadth of commitments outlined in the increasing number of sustainability and human rights obligations of companies, I also think it would be negligent of company boards and senior management to not be properly engaging with various stakeholder groups in interpreting and striving to achieve the related targets and goals. Without an alignment in understanding and collaboration across stakeholder groups, companies will fall well short of expectations in terms of outcomes. With further regard to engagement, there is also the critically important aspect of corporate culture that I would like to touch upon. In an Australian context, in early 2019, the corporate world was confronted by the release of the findings of the Royal Commission into the banking and financial services sector. Although the Commission's scope covered that sector, the findings were recognised as having direct relevance and applicability across other industry sectors. Among the specific recommendations was a recommendation that companies should take proper steps to assess the corporate culture and governance, identify and then deal with any problems with corporate culture, and then determine whether any changes have been effective. There is an explicit recognition in this recommendation that the primary responsibility for setting and having oversight of corporate culture lies with company boards and their senior management. This means that there is now a clear societal and statutory expectation that corporate boards should be held accountable for the corporate culture within their organisations. the need to have appropriate governance and stewardship over culture has become as significant in boardroom discussions as setting the corporate strategy. And the means of doing this carries joint and several responsibilities for board members. It requires effective collaboration amongst board members to work with senior management to articulate core corporate values and an understanding of appropriate corporate conduct and behaviours. It would also be practically impossible for a board to meet its responsibilities in this area without having regular engagement with employees from across the company and with representatives of other key stakeholder groups, particularly shareholders, community leaders, and governments. The mining industry, unfortunately, continues to suffer reputationally from obvious and dramatic failings in sustainability performance, despite what have clearly been concerted efforts in recent years to reset the corporate purpose statements, the corporate values, and ongoing commitments to globally accepted goals. Recent high-profile environmental disasters with extreme social impacts and incidents involving seemingly wanton destruction of valuable cultural heritage sites have again created a crisis of credibility for the industry. It has called into question just how meaningful the engagement is between company boards, senior management, and all the key stakeholder groups with a view towards value creation for all stakeholders, not just towards financial corporate profits. We are making progress, but we as an industry still have a long way to go reputationally. At the same time, the societal tolerance levels for shortcomings and failures are rapidly and alarmingly lowering. Effective, meaningful collaboration and engagement out of the boardroom and senior management teams across the various stakeholder groups and on issues that really matter, being environmental, social and economic issues, and corporate conduct, hold the key to delivering against our respective corporate statements of purpose. Thank you very much for your time.